Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be talking about Microsoft's case about buying Activision Blizzard and the FTC finally dropping it after almost, I feel like 3 years, or maybe 2 to 3 years. We are on Dexerto today. This is written by Jessica Philby. It'll be linked down in the description if you would like to check it out for yourself. The title goes, Microsoft president speaks out as FTC dropped case against Activision buyout. Now, if you didn't know, Microsoft is now 100% bought Activision Blizzard King, which for the big ones is for video games, at least the mainstream games, is all of the Blizzard games, of course. World of Warcraft, StarCraft, Diablo, and for the Activision stuff, it is mostly Call of Duty, and King are the people who made Candy Crush and stuff like that, if you didn't know. So a very big deal. It was like $69 billion, if I remember correctly, for the purchasing price. And it looks like the FTC has finally stopped their case against it because they're filing a case for monopoly or something similar to that. Just before we start the article, I'd like to remind everyone, please subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. Once I do, I'll be doing a Q&A video. So if you're interested in that, please subscribe and support the channel. Microsoft will finally be able to go through with its acquisition of Activision Blizzard after the Federal Trade Commission, or FTC, dropped its case against the company. Microsoft's president, Brad Smith, has now addressed the decision publicly, calling it common sense. Yeah, I mean, the problem is if I remember correctly, the FTC's case against them was through monopoly and stuff like that. And the problem is with the video game industry, it's just impossible to say that you're a monopoly because even though, yeah, true, Microsoft does own a lot of stuff, the video game industry is so big that's really hard to argue that they own everything, right? There's so many indie games, there's so many other big publishers like Ubisoft, Sony, Nintendo, EA, there's just so many of them. So like, I didn't really see it ever happening, honestly. Back on January 2022, Microsoft finalized its deal to purchase Activision Blizzard for a whopping $68.7 billion, making it the most expensive video game related acquisition to date. However, shortly after making the deal, the Federal Trade Commission, or FTC, attempted to block the merger, arguing that it would be a threat to competition in gaming, especially in first-party titles and subscription services, which, to be fair, makes sense. I would say arguably the bigger case with it is the subscription service because the Xbox Game Pass dominates in terms of subscription services for video games. Now, Nintendo's and Sony's subscription services aren't bad, but you can't argue the dollar to amount of games you get for the Xbox Game Pass. Like, I will shill the Xbox Game Pass like crazy. If you are a person that is like, wow, video games are so expensive, but you want to still play some of the newer games and stuff like that, the Xbox Game Pass is the way to go because it's such a good value for the subscription service. And especially if you are multi-people, then multiple people can play it as well. Obviously, the only big problem with it is that you either need a PC or an Xbox, because you can't obviously play it with a PlayStation or a Nintendo console. What followed was a 3-year battle between Microsoft and the FTC. Initially, the motion was denied by the Court of Appeals, to which the FTC submitted a preliminary injunction, the motion that forced Microsoft to hold off on the purchase. This was also denied in July 2023. The FTC vowed to keep trying until May 7, 2025. It was forced to drop the case. Yeah, while it dropped on May 7th, it wasn't until May 22nd that the Microsoft president and vice chairman Brad Smith spoke out on the case on X, or Twitter. And this is their official statement. Today's decision is a victory for players across the country and the common sense in Washington, D.C. We are grateful for the FTC for today's announcement. And honestly, yeah, the FTC really didn't have a chance because you just really can't. There's no really big argument. Yeah, it's true. They are they are a dominant force, but at least in first party titles, it's very obvious that Microsoft is actually in third place. So like, they're not actually dominating the video game industry. It's Nintendo that's dominating when you think about pure just sales. Nintendo dominates, and Sony is in second place but flubbing hard, and Microsoft is in third place but they're growing-ish depending on what numbers you're looking at. And Microsoft's new strategy of like having their games on PlayStation, and they probably tried to put them on Nintendo, but it probably didn't work, from my knowledge at least. So I never really saw this FTC court battle going their way because Microsoft was going to win, because you can see the arguments, but in reality they're not really a threat in the AAA industry in terms of having a pure monopoly, because the other three, or at least the other two, Sony and Nintendo, are very competitive against them because they're literally beating them if you look strictly at the numbers of sales. You could say in reputation maybe, Sony is in third place, and then Microsoft is in second place, and Nintendo is in first, depending on who you ask. I feel like in terms of reputation, Microsoft and Nintendo are first or second, depending on who you ask, because if you're talking about purely video game wise, it's Nintendo in first, but if you look back and you pull the curtains behind, because Nintendo does a lot of terrible legal stuff, I've talked about it plenty of times, they'd definitely be in second. But Sony is by far, like, they just make so many terrible decisions, and it's just really bad over there. The subsequent document highlighting the case being dismissed was also shared, revealing that the United States District Court would be denying the Commission's application for a permanent injunction to block the acquisition of Activision Blizzard Incorporated by Microsoft Corporate. It's interesting that it's called Activision Blizzard. I thought it was Activision Blizzard King. Interesting. They continued, the commission has determined that the public interest is best served by dismissing the administration or litigation. In this case, meaning the entire case has been officially dismissed. Yeah, this is great. Another thing, because basically the whole Microsoft and Activision Blizzard purchase has been in limbo because of this. And so I feel like Blizzard hasn't been able to really do a lot of things specifically because Microsoft, they've been kind of like who's in charge, because I feel like things are different if Microsoft's in charge or if Activision is in charge. So I'm hoping for some good news for Blizzard specifically because the purchase has finally gone through. Now, I'm not saying Microsoft is going to be the savior of Blizzard because you really can't save Blizzard at this point. It's going to take a very number of years to gain back all the trust that Blizzard had. But I feel like at least Microsoft has been proven to be a very hands-off overlord, without me thinking of a better term right now, because Activision was very involved in Blizzard, and there's a lot of things that people can say was Activision's fault and maybe not entirely Blizzard's fault. Now, I'm not saying Blizzard is blameless, of course, but there is a lot of things, at least over the years, that we've learned that Activision really was poking their hands into Blizzard's business a lot, and it didn't really seem to work in the long term. Maybe in short term, because obviously Blizzard is a crazy success, but it definitely didn't seem to work in the long term. So I'm hoping that maybe Microsoft's more hands-off approach, as long as they're making good video games, Microsoft really doesn't care. And I feel like, honestly, Blizzard is like the third thing that they want in Activision Blizzard, because they want King, Activision, and then Blizzard. Because King, obviously, with the Candy Crush and mobile money is crazy. Activision with Call of Duty, and then there's the Blizzard games. When it's true, World of Warcraft still dominates, StarCraft is, I guess, technically in all definitions an abandoned game, but there's still a big player base within the StarCraft RTS games. And Diablo 4 is doing all right. It's sold well, if I remember correctly. And though people do have problems with the leveling system and all that type of stuff, but like the Blizzard properties are doing all right. But I feel like there's been a lot of problems because of the Activision meddling and maybe Blizzard's hesitancy to start something when they don't know who's the boss. So hopefully this will fix that and maybe they can start kicking things into gear again. This will mean that Microsoft can officially purchase Activision Blizzard after 3 years of waiting. However, this will mean for new games and those previously controlled by Activision Blizzard is yet to be revealed. Though the original intention for this purchase was to gain control over the company's mobile games. Like I said, Blizzard is actually like not that important when it comes to the actual purchasing, because what they really want is the mobile side of the company, which is King. So I don't see them actually caring too much about what Blizzard does as long as they keep making good video games. Overwatch 2 I've seen as kind of been having a slow comeback, which is nice to see. World of Warcraft is, it's World of Warcraft. It'll always be doing relatively well. World of Warcraft's success is on its own gauge because, when they lose 3 million subscribers and everyone's saying, wow, it's a dead game, they still have like 8 million people playing with paid subscriptions. So it's not like they're broke or anything like that. It's just an ebb and flow, but the ebb and flow is very on a different scale. And with Diablo 4 being a good, decent game, and hopefully, I've talked about it before, there's rumors about new StarCraft content as well for new games. I'm pretty hopeful for this actual acquisition, and I hope that now that Blizzard can separate itself from Activision and just be Blizzard again, I am hoping that they can go back to just making good video games, because I feel like it's been a while since Blizzard is known for just making good video games and not all the crazy drama behind the scenes. It'll be nice to see, and I'm really hopeful for this, and I'm also kind of glad we can just move on from this, because this was kind of like a hovering thing for like the article said, 3 years. So if Microsoft can finally officially purchase this Activision Blizzard, and then everyone can just move on, which would be great. And that also means that basically all the Blizzard games are probably going to be on Xbox Game Pass. All the Activision games are going to be on Xbox Game Pass, and King is probably going to continue making tons of money on mobile stuff with with Microsoft being the benefactor now, which, you know, makes everyone happy, I guess. Thank you everyone for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. If you'd like to support the channel, please subscribe, like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you dislike it. I understand. You just heard my opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion down in the comments. Comment down below what you guys think about this whole situation. If you'd like to follow me on other platforms, I have a Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and Threads on any of those social medias at the Technojelly. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Goodbye everyone.